Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Vernon Richard Show. You know what the best thing about you, whatever it is you just did, Chris edited it out completely. So whatever you just screamed down the microphone, Vernon.
All I did was I did the whole fake cheering, so I went, yeah. You probably won't hear it. Yeah. That's
You
what I
did
did.
it again.
Yeah.
So Vernon, how are you using AI in your life at the moment? So for those not watching the video, Vernon was trying to cheer into his microphone by going, "Ooh, yeah," when we said the Vernon Richard Show, and his Chris.ai filter that he runs
Chris,
edited it all out.
you're embarrassing me in front of my friends, damn it.
Right. So, thank you everyone for all of your listens and shares, and people. Tristan gave us a nice shout out on LinkedIn yesterday when this was recorded, but thank you for that, Tristan. We got a follower off the back of that, so it does work. If you do like it, please do continue to share.
You know, it makes sense. We appreciate it.
So, the Euros are going on right now, just to get the football out of the way, because we like football.
Yeah.
We're recording this after what was an absolutely atrocious display from England, England's men's team.
Yep.
Yeah, definitely.
We stank the place out. Wow.
Yeah, that was bad. So yeah, no more of that. Let's go on to our first topic of choice.
Yeah.
So it is kind of football inspired. So recently, a guy called Vincent Kompany, who was in the past a defender for Manchester City and lots of other teams, and went into management, had a job at Burnley, who then got relegated from the Premier League. So and played.
I'm not the biggest team in the world at all.
Not a big team at all. Tiny. Was it his second job in management?
They are not at the top of the food chain of football clubs at all.
I'm just having a quick Google now. Yeah, it was only his second job in management as well.
Yep.
Got relegated, played absolutely terrible football all season, didn't adapt to the Premier League at all, and basically randomly ended up as the manager of Bayern Munich, who are one of the top 10 biggest clubs in the world. And it got me and Vernon thinking, like, that's mad that happened to Vincent Kompany. No offense, Vincent, if you're listening.
No, all the offense to you, Vincent, because I'm a Liverpool fan, and I also happen to be from Leicester, goddamn you. So when you buried it top bin 2019, I'll never forgive you. Anyway, sorry, that was a football tangent. Let's get back on topic.
But it made us think about, if you could work at any company in the world in a testing / quality capacity, and you could start tomorrow, where would you go? Who would you work for? What would you want to be doing?
Clarifying question.
Yeah.
Real company? Or...
Yes.
Okay.
Real company.
Okay.
I can go first, because...
Please, God, go first. I've got to think about this.
I probably have more answers if I thought more in depth, right? But my immediate one that jumps out to me is SpaceX. Now, I am not a fan of their leader. But when you see those videos of the rockets coming back down from space, the legs extending out and landing, and when they did that one where they had 3 rockets, 1 landed on the drone ship and 2 landed side by side, it blew my tiny mind. Like, I was just in awe and I was hooked, and now I watch every launch pretty much that comes up, and what they're doing with Starship now, and how that's like belly landing down and then rotating at the last minute. They did a test the other day. Yes, it landed in the sea, but it was intentional. But it hovered above the sea for like 10 seconds before they let it drop. And because that's how they're going to catch it. So this is a massive Starship that people can board and cargo and stuff, and they're going to catch it in a big cradle, that big arm. It's going to land, and then they're going to lock it into place with this big arm. And that just blows my mind. So the reason why I like it is obviously space is cool, right? Regardless, I think space is a fascinating, just mind-bending topic as in itself, right? But like doing something as working on something with a team of like people who are able to do all that calculations and all that engineering and create something that's never been done at a scale that inspires the whole planet. That's what appeals to me about working at somewhere like SpaceX and getting to work on like a rocket that, you know, hopefully continues to be used for good, even though I'm sure SpaceX have delivered, you know, satellites and weapons and stuff to space. Disclaimer, I'm not making any accusations, please don't sue me. I'm just guessing. But yeah, just that whole concept of like, you know, going into space, like, you know, I'm not convinced about the whole going to Mars and colonizing Mars and all that jazz, right? But building a spaceship that can take off, deliver these packages into space and land again. Oh, amazing. Absolutely amazing.
What? So you say you would work there. What would the job be that you would do? Do you know what I mean?
Well, I view this question more as like if you could work on any software, I would work on some of that software, I guess. That's what I would love to I say I'd love to do, like I don't know if I'd love to do it, right? But like just being on that team and building software that is used as part of that kind of thing would be great. Like don't get me wrong, working on apps, accounting software and all this stuff, right? It's great tech, right? But the domain isn't as like an exciting domain. Whereas if I was just working on, I don't know, some libraries that control the release of fuel into the engine. I don't know. I'm not a rocket scientist, right? But just knowing that you've got some lines of code on that rocket, I think would be. I think it'd be cool.
That's pretty sick. I was just googling because you reminded me that I think it was last year. Yeah, it was last summer, right? When Virgin Galactic sent their first space tourism flight with actual civilians on board up. And the reason I was looking is because I am of Antiguan heritage, and two of the passengers were from Antigua. Antigua is a Caribbean island that is absolutely stunningly beautiful, and you should visit if you get the chance. It has the best beaches that I've personally ever been on in my entire life. But it was just incredible that two of these people were from Antigua. So how that worked out is, I think there was a lottery basically on if you were getting Virgin Atlantic flights anywhere, then somehow that would get enter you in some kind of lottery. And one of the people that won, what's her name? Actually, I've got it here. Was a lady called Anastasia Myers, and that's how you say it. And she was studying just perfectly philosophy and physics at the University of Aberdeen at the time. I think she probably still is. But she was from Antigua, and so she managed to get a flight on this first flight into space, and she took her mum with her, which just made it even more amazing. And they're both from Antigua. It is too sick. That's too sick. So I was very excited when I watched that flight, and it was absolutely amazing. But yeah, I can definitely relate to that. I don't know. I think for me, this might be a slightly dull answer, but I would like to work at Nintendo because I love video games. I love video games. They're basically and the kind of video games I enjoy the most are probably sports video games, but also action adventure video games and RPGs, and getting lost in the storylines and things. I like reading books. So these are just like interactive books for me, where I'm actually the protagonist in the story, which is fantastic for me. And I remember the first time there were so many games that I played growing up that blew my mind in terms of how did they come up with that? Like how did they decide to put in that little secret, that little Easter egg, that little hidden part of the world? How did they even conceive that? Because you're just experimenting, you don't know what's possible necessarily. When gamers are always trying to break the rules in these games and always trying to explore. I just found it outstanding that you would notice something. So I remember playing, I mean, this is not a Nintendo game. It's going to be a bit weird, but it was Wonder Boy 3, The Dragon's Curse. I think that's what it's called. I'm gonna double check that. But Wonder Boys 3: The Dragon's Curse on the Sega Master System was the first game that I played. I was like, what? How have they made this game? This game is insane. It's got all these secret areas, and your character changes and evolves as the game progresses. They start off as a knight, and the first level they charge into a castle to kill this dragon, and as they kill the dragon curses you, and you turn into a dragon. So you're this little cute baby dragon, and you're able to breathe fire, and that means you have certain abilities, and then you evolve, and then you evolve, and then you evolve. Man. And then the next time I felt like that was when I was playing Zelda: A Link to the Past. Is it a Zelda: A Link to the Past? I think it's Zelda: A Link to the Past on the Super Nintendo. And again, just how did you design this game? How did you figure out to put this, interaction, this scene, this bit of the story, or this bit of the map, and make it just difficult enough so that I, the gamer, would have the sense of, oh my God, I've done it. This is amazing. Or how, find the secret area where you get some, item. I want to see how they do that. They'd probably have to kill me afterwards, because I'd probably go on the podcast and tell everyone how they do it.
But I think there's two ways of answering this question if I had more time. Like that, the immediate answer for me was something that I just look at and go, I just think that is incredible. Like you're doing with the game. It's like, I just think that technology, that engineering is just mind-bendingly incredible. And to be a part of that would be amazing.
Yep.
If I think a bit like you about things like joy, like obviously I'm a huge aviation geek, so some software in aviation, but like
I thought
definitely Boeing though. So
why not? I totally thought that the SpaceX thing was related to that. Like how much further up can you go? You've got space, dude.
yeah, I think it's more, when I think of aviation, I think of like, passenger jets, traveling, all the stuff that goes along with flying and stuff, as opposed to the SpaceX thing is just something that just captivated me as a person. I was just like, that's just mad, right? But it doesn't, there's other amazing technologies out there, right, that, you can look at and be like, that's also amazing. But there was just something about the rockets, just seeing it coming back down and landing, honestly, it gets me every time now. I think there's another guy, Daniel Knott's the same. I see him tweeting every time there's a SpaceX launch. I think he's got the same, whatever bug it is I've been bitten by, he's got the same thing, like, because he posts about it too. So,
Daniel's a great guy. Like, definitely go and subscribe to his YouTube channel if you haven't already. It's similar to me with video games. There is just a beautiful blend and combination of art and science and business, but mainly the art and the science. So the art is the storytelling and the character design and the narrative, all of these things. And the science is, okay, how are we going to build this thing? And we're building it on a Sega Master System, which, is an 8-bit machine with minimal memory and all the rest of it. And you got to keep people entertained. And the music is amazing. And how can you use the music to convey what's going on in a given, area of the map? Just all of that, I just find it incredible. And then to get to be able to test them for a living, my God. I mean, I didn't work on anything as amazing as Zelda, sadly. Although I did work on Bad Boys 2. Go and check that out. Very handsome video game characters. I might have.
You just reminded me
that's what I love. God, sorry.
No, you've reminded me of a meetup I went to in Macclesfield. I did a talk there, and I can't remember the name of the company. It was Blue something. I want to say Blue Tech, but something like that. But they were a game manufacturer for a long time. And the guy who founded the company was talking about his skills in game development, because you're so limited by memory and size and everything else, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that made them incredibly good at programming, because you needed to keep it all small.
Yes.
And then they transitioned into mobile app development because the same thing was there. The smaller you can keep the size of your app, and updates and space on a device, especially in the early days of phones. Obviously, the smaller your app was, like, the better. They transitioned into mobile apps because of that thing, and that, like, just thinking of, like, testing nowadays, like, if I was testing a mobile app, like, would I be that aware of the size of the app and how much space it's taking these days, compared to running it on, like, an iPhone 2, right? When there's limited space. But, like, that translates into what I was thinking about things like SpaceX and, even, like, any other, like, kind of, like, game where your resources are limited, right? A lot of the work I do now is on the cloud, and of course there's, limits to the machines that you use, but you just get a bigger machine, right? You can just keep upgrading. Whereas if you're working on a console or a rocket, right, there's only so much space and lines of code and, memory that you can stick on these things. And, like, it's another aspect of, thinking of, like, quality characteristics, like, you get into those kind of spaces.
Can you imagine testing stuff like that?
Yes, I can. That's why I want
the nefariousness of what you have to test based. Wow. Anyway,
I think it would be an amazing challenge, but I also think because it is such the amount of money, like, the danger, obviously, in number one, right? The danger of, like, the risk. Like, when we were talking a long time ago after Lita Tellier, and they was talking about the medical software that two of the speakers were working on.
Yeah.
The risk in this, like, the risk of death to people near the launch site, around the launch site, the rocket, like, like, you've got to test the self-destruct of the rocket, right? Because if it goes off track and starts, you've got to blow the thing up. Right, how do you test blowing the rocket up without blowing the rocket up?
Oh boy, yeah, indeed.
And then, like, there's obviously then, when you're carrying people now to the space station, obviously that's risk of life. Like, and not to mention that each rocket probably costs tens of millions, if not more.
Millions.
It's
tens of millions.
It's mad. But let's flow into our next topic of discussion that we wrote down after a few conversations last week. Emotions in software testing was a topic that came up.
What were we talking about when this came up?
We were talking about, I remember explaining that I can't remember what it was. It was about me being very functional and I love things that just work, and that I like to buy £2.50 t-shirts.
Steady on. I do recall 80% polyester.
Yeah, that are at least 80% polyester.
Heathen. You're not a complete heathen, mate. You do have some taste.
But then I think that triggered you to think about, like, maybe the emotions of wearing nicer clothes or certain brands or certain designs or whatever, right? And then we kind of got to that whole thing around when it comes to software testing and quality, functionality is not enough, right? There's other things.
Yeah. I mean, what I remember, when I think about emotions in software development, but particularly in software testing, I think that they're quite good clues that there is a problem.
Okay.
If you are mindful enough to notice. So if you're completely consumed by the emotion, then probably you may not notice. But if you're able to slow down just enough to catch yourself in the midst of experiencing whatever the emotion is, that can be quite a clue to dig deeper sometimes.
Yeah.
So one that I would use wasn't even the favorite one I like talking about. Wasn't even my emotion. It would be my colleague's emotion. So this is in the before times when we were all in the same office all the time. And I would, I was at my desk and my friend GT was a developer. This was when this team I was on was fantastic. Like, everyone that worked there was absolutely brilliant and good fun as well. So he'd be sat behind me, but he was generally speaking a pretty chill guy. He'd have his noise cancels on like most of us did, and listening to tunes or whatever. But if I ever managed to overhear him swearing to himself, honestly, I'd be like, I need to know what that is, because he never swears. Or not like that. No, that's what it felt like. So that was always a clue, like, hang on, the what the fucks per minute have increased significantly. I need to find out what's going on. And another one that I've experienced personally would be frustration.
Yeah.
And thing when I get frustrated is that I stop thinking and behaving clearly. So it's almost like I have to say to myself, well, it's not even almost. I have to say to myself, slow down. What are you trying to achieve? And just notice what is making that difficult, or what is making that irritating and annoying, and making it very frustrating. And that can help me slow down and get to the source of the issue, so I can
That's
share it with my
interesting.
teammates. But there are other ones like anger, confusion, frustration,
Well, I think before we move on to those
fear.
ones, I think just to respond to the first one, like the fucks per minute. I think the equivalent in the modern day world of that is git commit messages. So
Yeah, because
implemented
this was
Jira
before
ticket
Git push out.
197. Made a small mistake with 197. This best work. What the fuck is going on? Please fucking work. Like, you can just see these git commits coming in, and you get the final one that basically says, yeah, Richard's an idiot. I've realised what I did wrong. Feature complete, like whatever it is. I think that's the modern equivalent of that thing, because obviously you can't hear the frustration. But yeah, I've been there as well. And like I think the another one in that same space is like, if you get to pair with someone and they similar emotion of like slightly different emotion in a good way, where they're learning a lot as they're doing it. But the fact that they're learning as they're going on that framework or block of code often means that it's probably not going to be as optimized or as accurate as they could be, because they're learning as they go. They've not learned like the kind of good practices of that yet. I've had that a few times where we've basically been learning and coding as we go, and that frustration and joy at the same time of going, now I know what it is. It's not doing what I want again. Oh, it's doing what I want. Often has led, in my experience, led to a couple of small mistakes that we don't notice in the time, because we're riding that roller coaster of going, how does this thing work? Oh, it works that way. That's great. Oh, how does this thing work? Oh, it works that way. And you lose that awareness of that you might not be doing it as optimally as possible. I've had that too.
Interesting. That's you just made sorry. You just made I was thinking about when I was on that same team with GT, just because we were getting to grips with BDD, and that led to a few little sweary outbursts, shall we say. That was my first encounter with the behavior driven development.
Was it related to it should do A, B, C, D, right, and it just flows out of your mouth, and then someone goes, can you write that as a gherkin scenario? And you're like, no. Like, I've tried. No, I can't.
It kind of was, because so I absolutely love BDD when I think about it conceptually, but I am yet to work anywhere where we've been able to do it quote unquote properly and really realize all of the value.
I've never done it.
When I hear it described. And so one of the challenges that we had is that the thing that was making me laugh was somebody's attempt to turn their idea into like a BDD scenario. You get people say stuff like, as the system, when somebody uses me, then it works. Like, what?
We've mentioned this before, right? I think we might have said this in one of our early episodes. I've always loved those tickets that you get as a user. When I want to log in, it's like, no, you don't. No user wants to log into your website. They want to buy a t-shirt or whatever it is. You're just forcing them to log in because that's how you've architected your system, right? But yeah, and then I think like we're laughing about writing it now, like just for normal tickets, but like that's exactly why we've seen the, I'm gonna say shit show, because that's what it is when people use it just to automate, and then you end up with 20-line long scenarios because it's just and then it might as well chuck a few more whens and thens in just for fun.
I've seen
mad.
that. It's wild, man.
Mad. So that's my only real experience of BDD. I know a lot of good sides because former colleague Mark Winteringham used to
Shout out, Mark.
teach BDD, so I've seen a lot of his work. And whenever me and him used to teach the automation and testing class, there was always there's a lesson in that class where we get people to review existing automated checks, and some of them are in Gherkin. And basically, at the end of that exercise, there's always made a big deal of it. Like we were like, right, okay, Mark, here you go. You've got 12 minutes. Start your rant. So, and then he would fly through his rant, and then I'd be like, "That time up." But yeah, it was basically what we're saying about, BDD is great and can be incredibly impactful if you're doing it in the, what's Liz Keogh's thing? Like having the conversation is more important than automating the conversation, which is more important than documenting the conversation, right?
Having the conversation. In fact, I'm going to find it while you're talking. Having the conversation is more important.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it's that. Because automating's better than documenting, because then you've got living documentation, as she refers to. And then obviously having the conversation is far more important than just documenting it in the first place. But yeah, I've not been in a context that's done it well at all. I've only been in, like I said, the awful context where it's been used as an abstraction layer in automation, which again can be valuable. But in the context I was in, it was a layer for the sake of having a layer to make it appear less technical to read what the tests were doing. Whereas instead it was actually giving us 2 more layers to maintain and 2 more layers to write when we create, and incredibly slowed us down. It wasn't valuable at all. So yeah, made me feel frustrated, made me feel annoyed, back to emotions. made me feel despair. So another emotion which might sound like, I don't know, counterintuitive that I listen to is often joy and ease of using the application, because it makes me go, is it easy because it's me and I know the app and I've been involved in all the conversations, or is it easy and joyful to use because it's actually joyful to use? And I found that really interesting, to get my, biases and stuff checked by somebody else, and like, I think this app is really, really nice. Like, I need to get someone else to say if it's true or not. And most of the time it has been the case that it is a really nice app. But there's other occasions that I talk a lot about, stories around automation, where I know where things are going to be. So I'm already drawing my eyes and my mouse to where I know that component's going to load. Whereas I think if someone didn't know that, they're going to see. So I only see one component because I'm already fixed on it. I'm waiting for it to load. I'm interacting with it as soon as it appears. Whereas other people, they see the full page, right? They see 6, 7, 8, 10 components all loading at the same time. And are they going to be drawn to the one that they were meant to be getting their attention for? So yeah, that was one of the scenarios where I was like, I can't wait for this component to load. It's so pretty, it looks great, it works, and I know what it's going to be, and it just works, and it's brilliant, and it's all tested, it's the best thing ever, right? But other people, when they went to review it, they weren't drawn to that one. They were drawn to the other one, which had like a carousel on it with like images sliding across. Their eyes were drawn over there, and not to the one I wanted them to look at. Well, not me, but the team wanted them to look at. So yeah, I think joy is a great one, and most of the time it's like, yes, this is an awesome emotion. We've done really good work here. But sometimes it can be, I think, biasing you and mislead you a
bit. Fear is one for me. Maybe the complete, maybe not the total opposite. Maybe the opposite of joy is sadness, but fear is one. So if I have a lot of fear about doing anything almost with software, and I was like, okay, can I recover from this situation? So if I delete something, can I recover it? Or if I change an option, can I go back to it? And that can be another signal that maybe something isn't very usable, or it's not very clear that the consequences.
Yes.
There's that adage or concept in UX design, which is something along the lines of, if the user makes a mistake in the application, it's your fault. as the person or persons designing the system. So everything should be as usable or clear as possible. So it should be obvious that if I interact with a particular thing in this app, what the consequences of that thing will be. And if I do that and then I lose data, or I'm
Yeah.
in the middle of a flow and I get kicked out and I have to start all over again, that should not be possible. So whenever I
Yeah.
find myself a little bit scared or reluctant to take an action, I'm like, "Oh, what's going on here? Is there a problem with the app, or am I just being a chicken?
But you know what's fun
Or,
about that,
or is the
right?
system not very testable, and I'm just
Yeah,
scared that, oh no, but I have to start
maybe.
all this all over again, because if this doesn't work, then the system is trashed and
The one that terrifies me, and it's now I'm picturing it in my head. The design doesn't help, right? And it's sending people money. So on your
oh my
banking
god,
apps, when you send
yeah,
people money, right? And I
yeah,
know I know they're more popular in America, like Venmo and Cash App and these things that, are a lot more, you
mm-hmm,
know, smaller transactions, probably not that big deal, right? But
mm-hmm,
like when you do it in the banking app, like you're already nervous, or like I am anyway. But then now you
yes.
get the massive red text that says, "Are you being scammed? Have you checked this in?" And you're like, "What?" Like, and then you're reading this text, and then you're like, "I don't know. Am I being scammed? I don't know." Like Vernon said, I was just paying for the chips. Am I paying for more than the chips? Like, how much were the chips? Like, whatever
Just
it
for
was.
future reference, Rich, it's totally normal to pay £10 million for chips. Just let you know, okay,
But like
via my
that's
bank
a
account.
that's a funny thing that I feel that when you get, every app that wants to do something that is irreversible or high risk or whatever, right? It's always red. You know what I mean? Because we want to make you aware that what you're doing might be irreversible, but also at the same time, most of the users are maybe not always like, ready for that. Most people want, it's nice to be told the warnings, but I'm not sure they always help with, those emotions. And the one for me was paying for the house deposit, like sending someone, tens of thousands of pounds for deposit for your house and like really hoping that it arrives where it's meant to. Because the amount of times I triple check those numbers, like I remember I think I was with my dad as well. I was like, "Can you check these numbers, Dad?" Like just and then check them again.
Would you mind
Um,
like double and triple check?
but then you hear all those stories, right? When people get money by mistake and then they don't tell anyone and then they spend it,
Oh,
and then
tell
they.
me about it, Richie Rich. Tell me about it. God damn.
So yeah, it is like the fair one is a massive one, and it is. Yeah, I think I agree with that one. That one is a really good one. I'm trying to think of some others that emotions that I get during testing. Like you mentioned frustration, like you shout, you check that one in. I think that's a very common heuristic, right? If we're building it and we're used to the domain and we're used to the knowledge and context of an app and we're frustrated using it, like the users are going to be really frustrated using it. And so,
Another emotion that you can use in your life is suspicion, with your very rude children who you can hear getting up to no good whilst you're on a podcast, and they think they will not be caught and busted and rumbled. But I'm on to you, lad. Sorry, tangent.
no,
Uh,
suspicion's a good one. Like I was doing some testing today, and I don't know what you call it, right? Well, maybe someone maybe you might know a better term for it. And I'm sure I probably do in the back of my head somewhere. But like, you've seen a few things go wrong in the past, like bugs, right? You've seen these bugs, and then you're like, that was weeks ago, right? And now you're testing something else, and you've seen kind of a similar bug, but not. It's definitely not correlation. Like, there's definitely not. Then definitely not it's causation instead of correlation, maybe. But like that suspicion where you go, I wonder if they're the same root cause, and how could I quickly test that hypothesis? And I had one today where proved not to be the case, but I had a hunch. There's employment records that you have in our system that are in Salesforce,
okay,
and in certain scenarios it was working.
okay,
Basically, whole parent-child relationship kind of problems and a hierarchy of companies.
okay.
And my hunch was because it worked on one time, and I thought, what's going on here? I wonder if it's the order of the records. I wonder if it's taking the first one
Yeah.
and ignoring the rest. And usually the first one would be the latest one, and that's how it's doing what it's doing. So I quickly tested it, and it was not true. It was not a good hypothesis. But it did lead to me realising that the fact that that scenario worked was because it had been set up wrong. So it had been set up on the parent, not the child, and it was the children thing that was failing. So it did lead me to realising that the scenario didn't work. The data was wrong. So that suspicion wasn't suspicious of the right thing, but that suspicion led me enough to try something else, which did reveal something interesting.
Suspicion. When have I used? I think suspicion comes into play for me in a whole host of different ways, so because I've been on a bunch of different projects, sometimes, often it's consciously, but oftentimes it's unconscious. You kind of distill these patterns, or you see certain things before, and isn't that funny? So I was listening to a YouTube video today by Alex Hormozi. I'm always listening to Alex Hormozi videos. He's this business guy, but he was talking about this, right? So I get suspicious where, let's say we're on a project, and then what's an example? You might be implementing an API, maybe, and maybe because I've been on projects before where the way the API was implemented, when certain character sets were submitted via the API, things blew up.
Yeah.
I'm now suspicious whenever we're doing that again. I'm like, well, I'm going to make sure I check that, because the last time I ran into that thing, or the last few times I ran into that thing, it kicked me right in the privates. And he was the way he described it was quite interesting. So he was talking about in terms of the Matrix. So there's the scene in the first Matrix where Morpheus is showing Neo the Matrix, and he's trying to say, if anyone who's still plugged into the Matrix is the enemy. And as he's explained, there's all these people, and there's a woman in a red dress that walked past. She's stunningly beautiful. The dress looks amazing. And so Morpheus goes to him, were you listening to me, or were you looking at the woman in the red dress? And he's like, look at her again. And he turns around, and it's like an agent with a gun in his face.
Yeah.
And so Alex Hormozi was like saying, so you make that mistake, but then, you fast forward a few iterations, whatever, and then it's not a blonde woman in a red dress. It's, I don't know, a brown-haired woman in an orange dress. You're like, well, it's not the same, but it kind of is the same. Maybe it's not her, but it's her sister. Maybe, or maybe she was in a short dress, now she's in a long dress, or maybe she was a white woman, now she's a black woman, or, he's basically saying it's kind of the same. I was like, that's a really interesting way to describe it. So yeah, when your hackles get raised or your suspicions get aroused, and you're like, I think I've been in this scenario before. Let me just check X, Y, or Z, or share something with the team. That can be very useful to do.
So I had a nice message from a friend of ours called Vernon this week, which has made me which has made me think of the test fit deck that he made, right, which has emotions in it, but also what you just described brings back the heuristics, right? Because to just go back full to the very start of the podcast, I'm not a gamer, but in these games and when I see clips of people playing game, it's like, why is there a bin on the edge of that balcony? What is that? Is that someone disguised as a bin who's going to shoot me? Why is there a different colored brick on that wall, right? Again, I don't play these games, but these examples that draw your suspicion, and then after a while, instead of thinking that you're suspicious, you design a heuristic that allows you to apply said heuristic to go. So you're going to immediately now join that level and go, is there any different colored bricks? Is there any bins anywhere? Is there any people wearing orange dresses? Right? You immediately come in with your heuristics, right? And then over time, you turn those heuristics maybe into a cheat sheet. And then you immediately go through your cheat sheet. So I think you can. I think when we think about software and like testing and quality aspects of it, a lot of it does stem from the emotions. Listening to those emotions, taking some actions that result in useful information, and then thinking about applying them again. And you mentioned familiarity, and I think that was one of the early heuristics I got taught, was the familiarity heuristic. But it was taught to me from a point of view of, this is a news website, BBC. This is a news website, Sky News. How are they familiar, right? Because you're both in the same domain. There should be some aspects of familiarity, and can you spot them? You know, like, I don't know, topics for the news pieces or images or things, and then you would spot something on one familiar app that you go, we do not have that. Like, why don't we have that, like, obvious thing that every news app or every weather app has?
Yeah.
Right? And then you plug that in, and then over time, again, you would turn that into like a rule or a heuristic or a cheat sheet that says, you know, make sure we have this on this page, and then we naturally start to have all these test ideas and things that help us come up with test ideas.
I think I think they're probably the main ones for me: the fear, the suspicion, other people's frustration, and my own frustration. Joy is one that
for me.
I don't. Joy was interesting. I don't. That's maybe I'm just a miserable git. I never seem to focus on joy. Oh man, usually I'm just like hacked off. Why is this thing not working? Why can't I do this?
I think, like, you know, joy, positive, happiness, like, there's definitely been apps I've used, you know, in the past where we get into a really good place with them, and, you know, it does feel joy to use, like, you know, especially if you're on an app where, for me, it was a mobile app used by millions of people, and the time and money that we got to really focus on the UX of that app, it did make it a joyful experience to use the app. Like, you know, there was obviously areas of frustration, but like being able to make these little tweaks that made it sort of easier for the user to get from A to B, or to get to exactly what they're looking for. You know, it did bring joy when you saw it, you know, built and in front of you. It was pretty cool. Yeah, I can't think of any other massive ones. But yes, like, honestly, share in the comments wherever you'll pick this link up from, what emotions trigger you the most or help you the most with your software, you know, testing and quality work. Maybe some stories if you've got any to share. Please ping them somewhere.
Yeah, let us know.
And if you want to share your dream job, if you could work in any company doing software testing quality work, where would you work and why? Let us know. Cool. Right. Apart from that, subscribe, follow, share, link, do all those things. We're desperately, if I put on my what's his name, Stephen Bartlett from the Diary of a CEO, me and Vernon are on a mission to be able to put links on the YouTube video. In order to do that, we need 1,000 subscribers. We have had more than 2,000 listeners in total.
Is that minutes? It's watch time, isn't it? So if you had the watch time, I haven't looked at the stats.
No, it's purely followers for this feature. It's 1,000 followers. Gets us that ability to add links to the videos. But I looked at some stats, and we've had more than 2,000 different people watch aspects
I can't do a
of
Stephen
the videos.
Bartlett impression. We've had I can't do the smooth Stephen Bartlett voice.
Anyway, please share, subscribe, comment, feedback, do all those beautiful, wonderful things, and thank you all for listening. And
give us some advice and or feedback on how we can make these episodes better. We would love to get it. You know, hit us up on LinkedIn, hit us up on. Have people got our emails? Do we even have an email? I don't even know if I have an email. We don't have Twitter yet. Or X,
no, but we have them. So
yeah, hit us up directly. Yeah, man.
Cool. All right. And my best Rest is Football voice. Goodbye from me.
And goodbye from me.